Well, let's get started with our why. This infographic shows the statistics, and the underpinnings of those will be in our resources. If you look at the top part of this graphic, in green you have the very top is 5% of our learners will read, and they'll make that learning how to read seem effortless. 35% of our readers will learn with relatively broad instruction, but those two top tiers, those students are advantaged by a structured literacy approach. But the real why is here in the 65% of other students where a structured literacy approach to teaching reading and writing is essential. So it's essential for most readers, it's effective for all readers. And that's general education students, students with disabilities, or students who are learning English as a second language. But structured literacy is not the way most of us were taught, either in our primary or secondary education or post-secondary. We are likely familiar with these classrooms where there is a combination of whole group and small group instruction. There's guided reading in the small group instruction, and reading is based off of authentic text and literature. Phonics and comprehension and other strategies are taught based on the perception of the needs of the students as determined by the teacher. And running records is used as an assessment tool for students. And phonics might be taught with a word study or a mini lesson approach. That type of classroom is different than a structured literacy classroom. More differences are listed here, where a large glaring difference is how kids are taught to read, specifically with decoding. In a structured literacy classroom, there is no cueing. Okay. Students are always directed to look at the word, apply the sounds to the letter patterns that they see in front of them, view it from left to right, and to sound out or to decode with the skills that they have learned in a very sequential progression. The difference matters because effective instruction is key for all of our students to learn how to read, not just 40% of our students who will learn how to read sort of regardless of how they are taught. There are two reports by America Public Media. They're listed here. There's podcasts, or they're also documented out on the site. I recommend that you listen to them. They further get into sort of where we are in our reading history and currently, and what the research shows is most effective for our struggling readers. It's also important to be aware of the difference between a balanced literacy classroom and a structured literacy classroom, because we know from David Kilpatrick's research in his book, Assessing and Preventing and Overcoming Reading Difficulties, in his review of the reading research, he found that those programs that were the most highly effective, and by highly effective we mean students gained 12 to 25 standard score points on their assessments, those programs had these three common components, even if they arrived at them using different approaches or curriculums. And these components are within structured literacy. So teaching phonemic awareness to advanced levels, teaching and reinforcing letter sound knowledge, decoding skills, and then the students having extensive opportunity to read connected text. And by connected text, another word for that is decodable text, where what the student is reading and practicing is matched to the phonics lesson that they have learned, so that they are able to apply their skills to mastery before then applying them to something that's new and moving on with reading things that may not match where they are in the scope and sequence of structured literacy. So structured literacy involves what is taught, so the content components, and those are listed out there. Structured literacy involves strong knowledge in these areas: phonology, sound to symbol, syllable types, morphology, syntax, and semantics. And structured literacy also involves how it is taught, by instruction that is explicit and diagnostic and systematic and cumulative, and you can even include in the middle of that circle, if you'd like, multi-sensory is beneficial for our students. So we'll show you a couple examples today where you'll see explicit instruction that's taught without any assumption that the student already knows this. You will see instruction that's diagnostic, and you will see that it does follow a scope and sequence similar to what you have in front of you. And in structured literacy, in each one of those content area components in the circle, teacher knowledge of the progression of skills is important, because you want to start with teaching the easiest skill to mastery and then to move forward. So that wraps it up. And this is a different visual, but we like this one too because oral language is at the core. This visual is also structured literacy. This is from Literacy How. And you can see you have the same content wheels, just worded maybe slightly different, but with the recognition that a student's oral language is as the core of their reading acquisition. With Oregon's dyslexia legislation, we have opportunities for teachers in every K-5 classroom to get trained in understanding and recognizing dyslexia and the foundational skills in reading and learning how to intensify instruction. We also have legislation that is working to transform higher education. So with Senate Bill 212 and House Bill 2412, higher education institutions need to include content on dyslexia in the programs that are listed there. And the content needs to be consistent with the knowledge and practice standards of an international organization on dyslexia. That's the IDA. So the International Dyslexia Association's knowledge and practice standards are also organized around what is taught and how it is taught. And the standards reflect this current state of scientific research based on the rigorous vetting and development and even revisions as late as last year. The knowledge and practice standards can be found on our website, but I also printed a few copies if you like to have a hard copy to take home. There's some on the chairs over there. They're laid out in very nice detail, not only for what is taught and how it is taught, but also with what you would look for in a practicum experience or in a classroom experience, what that looks like in practice. And the knowledge and practice standards are based on sort of these areas where teacher knowledge, and any teacher of reading should be knowledgeable in these things. Concepts about oral and written language, knowledge about the structure of language, knowledge of dyslexia and other learning disorders, and interpretation of assessments. And then if you see standard E, there's a whole series of the practice standards that's devoted to the elements of structured literacy related to those core components. I teach secondary language arts, and I came to know about dyslexia because people I cared about found out that they were dyslexic, and I realized I needed to learn more. And the more I learned, the more I realized, oh, that's a whole bunch of kids in my class. So I wasn't taught really all of these things. I was taught some of these things. But no matter what level you work with students, all of this knowledge is important. So now what I want to do is show you a video that recapsules what I just said, spoken to you by Nancy Hennessy, who is a dyslexia specialist at Middle Tennessee State University.
As we strive to ensure that all children develop into independent, proficient readers, people ask a very straightforward question. What is the most effective approach to reading instruction? The answer is structured literacy. But what is structured literacy?
Structured literacy is a systematic approach to the teaching of reading and writing. It is based in years of research, and it directly and explicitly teaches students how to work with written language.
Well, that makes sense and raises another question. What do we teach when we adopt a structured literacy approach?
The components of structured literacy are many. We begin by teaching students about sounds, how the sounds work within words to combine to convey meaning. We move from sounds, phonemes, to the teaching of the letter or letters that can be mapped onto those sounds, sound-symbol correspondence. For example, think about the sound k. What letter or letters can be used C, K, but also CK. So we have to be thinking about the patterns that are represented within our English language. We can move from sound-symbol correspondence then to the teaching of syllable types. Think a bit about why we teach our children short vowels. Wow, we find those in the most common syllable type, a closed syllable. That pattern, the consonant following the vowel, is a clue to the vowel sound. I think that it's important to remember that when we teach sound-symbol correspondence, phoneme-grapheme correspondence, and syllable types, we're teaching that not only for the reading of words, but also for the spelling of words. We also have to be cognizant of the morphemes that we find within words. Morphemes, of course, are meaning units. We immediately ask our students to read base words, and then we add endings, inflectional endings like ed, s, ing. And then we move to more advanced morphemes. We do this not only for the reading of words, but also to unlock the meaning of words.
As we just heard, when adopting a structured literacy approach, we explicitly teach children the sound structure of language. We also teach the children letter knowledge, the names of the letters, their formations, and the sounds that correspond to each of the letters. Children are taught the different types of syllables to help them learn what sounds the vowels in a word will make. We directly teach spelling, and we teach children about the meaning units within words, morphemes. We also must ensure that children are provided with instruction to aid them in comprehending both oral and written language. It is not enough just to teach children the word structure of a language. We also directly teach them about text structure and how to understand the meanings of a text.
It's important for our students to not only be able to read words, but to make meaning. And so, as a part of structured literacy, we address the meaning of words, vocabulary. We talk with our students about sentences and how sentences are constructed, both for reading and for writing. We also think about the overall meaning of paragraphs, the text itself. So structured literacy really encompasses all of the elements that are necessary for a student to become a proficient reader.
When we adopt a structured literacy approach, we teach children language. We teach word structure to support reading, spelling, and the meanings of words. We also teach the structure of text and how to understand both oral and written language. This, of course, raises the question as to what instructional methods do we use to teach these aspects of language. We teach children the structure of language in an explicit and direct manner. So, let's consider effective methods for teaching that are used in a structured literacy approach.
Structured literacy includes all of the principles of effective instruction. Instruction is explicit. That is, it is teacher-directed. The teacher demonstrates or explains skills and concepts and then provides opportunity for students to practice, both guided practice with feedback, corrective feedback, as well as independent practice. That practice is often accomplished for word identification with materials that provide the additional repetition that's necessary for the mastery of the skill or concept that's just been taught. Decodable texts are a good example of this. An important aspect of structured literacy is that it is in fact systematic. When we teach our students how to read words, we introduce skills and concepts in a logical order, beginning with what's easiest, to moving to what's more complex, what's most regular, to moving to what is irregular. In other words, laying down the prerequisites that are necessary for word identification. Comprehension instruction is also systematic and strategic. It is scaffolded sufficiently so that students can master the concepts and skills necessary to make meaning of the text. A third characteristic of structured literacy instruction is that it is cumulative in nature. That is, those skills and concepts that have been previously taught are consistently reinforced and practiced over time. We build on what has come before as we introduce new concepts and skills. Structured literacy is diagnostic in nature. That means that the teacher, in working with his or her students, whether in small or large groups, is consistently and constantly monitoring the progress of their students so that they can intervene appropriately, so that their students can achieve automaticity and mastery of skill and concept.
Structured literacy requires a specific approach to instruction. A teacher must provide explicit and direct instruction. There must be opportunities for guided practice, and once a student is ready, students should have opportunities for independent practice. When adopting a structured literacy approach, instruction is systematic and follows a logical sequence. The instruction builds in a cumulative fashion, and opportunities to practice previously taught concepts are provided over time. The instruction is also provided in a diagnostic manner. Information about a student's understanding and mastery of concepts and skills is used to inform how a teacher plans instruction in a thoughtful manner to help a child to secure their understanding and skills. So, in which educational settings can structured literacy be used, and for which students is it appropriate?
Structured literacy is effective as a core reading program. It's also extremely effective for students who are at risk for multiple reasons, as well as the student with dyslexia. The principal difference would be in the delivery of instruction. Those students who are at risk or the student with dyslexia would require more intensive instruction.
Structured literacy addresses the needs of all students and can be delivered in an intensive and sustained manner to meet the needs of those children who struggle with reading, including those with dyslexia. So, as we consider how we move forward, we are left with the ultimate question: what do we do?
So often in classrooms, teachers are asking themselves what else can they do so that their students can achieve reading proficiency. We have the answer: implement structured literacy.
Today's session is like setting the table for a feast. So I'm setting the table with you for a structured literacy feast. But that feast is not in this 90-minute session, okay? So what I want to do is, by showing you an overview and then some examples, give you that starting point to then engage in the feast that will come as you learn or train in all of the elements that compose structured literacy. Okay, so that sounds fine generally. You might say, okay, I understand those concepts. Let me show you what that looks like as a whole lesson, okay? So I'm going to show you a first grade student working with a teacher. In this video, it's one-on-one. I realize that that's not everyone's world, and that's okay. What I want you to do is see what a whole structured literacy lesson looks like from start to finish, because you'll see the explicit nature of it and you'll see the teaching elements used. This is from the YouTube site From Literacy How. That's also in your references. I recommend, if you want to see more examples, to check out the YouTube channel from Literacy How.
Okay, now we're going to start with our letter sounds. Okay, name.
Z.
Sound.
Z.
Name.
S.
Sound. Name.
V.
Sound. Name.
F.
Sound. Name.
T.
Sound. Name. Name.
N.
Sound.
N.
Okay, put your vowels. Sound.
I.
Eh. Name. Name.
A.
Sound. Name.
E.
Sound. Name.
U.
Sound. Name.
O.
Sound. Ah. Now we're going to play a game. Here. Here's our apple. Ready? Ah. Ah. Eh. Ah. Ah. Now I'm going to play a game, and I'm going to give you the gesture, and you're going to say the sound. You ready?
A. E.
Eh, 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 eh.
E. O. E. O.
Okay, today we're going to focus on the sound. Okay, say there you go. What I would like you to do is make the word lead. Use your fingers. Okay, we're going to separate the sounds in lead. Go ahead, lead.
U. And.
How many sounds are in
3.
lead? Now we're going to add another sound to the beginning of lead. Now I want you to separate the sounds to sled.
Sled.
Use your fingers.
U. And.
Very good. Okay. Now make the word ben. Okay. Separate the sounds in ben. Go ahead.
B.
Okay. Be careful with the b. We're not going to say b. We're going to say b. N. Go ahead.
B.
Very good. I'm going to leave this here. Now I want you to make the word bet underneath it. We're going to change ben to bet. Listen for the sound change. Bet.
B. B.
To bet. Nice job. What changed? Ben to bet.
N turn to N turn to T.
Very good. High fives. Change to t. Now say and move bet.
B. T.
Good. Okay, now we're going to pick up our pencil. Now I'd like you to write the letters that make those sounds. What's the first sound you hear in bet?
B.
What letter makes the sound?
E.
And what's the last sound you hear in bet? Good.
My John is very nice.
Okay. Say the sounds again.
B.
Now I want you to write the letters, but you're going to have say the name of the letter. Go ahead.
B. E. T.
What's that word?
Bet.
Do you know what bet means?
That means you better do what I say.
I bet you do your homework every night.
Yeah, that's what I do.
I bet that maybe it's going to rain later today. It means that maybe something's going to happen. Okay, now this is bet. Now I want you to make the word wet. Give me the pencil. Wet. Build wet. Watch, look. Bet, wet.
Bet and wet.
Nice job. Now,
Now
what changed?
B turned to W.
Okay, sounds.
B turned to W.
Good. Say and move wet. Good. Now pick up your pencil. We're going to move these up just a tiny bit. Go ahead.
W.
Say what? Now you're going to say the letter names.
W. E. T.
What's the word?
Wet.
Now, can you use the word wet in a sentence?
I wet my dog.
I wet my dog.
Yeah, dogs take a bath.
How about my dog is wet?
Yeah, my dog is
Okay, try writing that right here. My dog is wet.
My dog is
Okay, look at your sentence carefully.
my dog is wet.
What do you need at the end of the sentence to make it a sentence? And what do we have to do at the beginning of the sentence? Give me your pencil. The first letter has to be a capital letter. So we're going to make a capital M. That's a capital M. So that's what you should start it. Can you write the word my with a capital M right underneath there? There you go.
It's nice to be by myself.
What you saw there was an example of structured literacy in action, where you got to see the different teaching elements in the content, and you also got to see the method that's explicit and systematic and diagnostic and cumulative and multisensory. So teacher knowledge is key. Teacher knowledge in the structure of language as well as the science of reading. And the scope and sequence of what you're teaching with each of the structured literacy content components, that matters. And the acquisition of those skills can be considered a stage, not an age. That's particularly meaningful for me as a high school teacher, because we have a tendency to try to help our students with fluency or comprehension skills as they get older. But most of our students, now that I've learned more, I've determined are weak at the word level. And they need sound work first, and then they can more strongly apply or bond those sounds to the letter patterns. And those letter patterns then make more sense and are anchored more strongly into the more efficient reading pathways that we're trying to build in our students, no matter how old they are. So teacher knowledge is key. Knowledge of things like this, of Scarborough's reading rope, and the fact that skilled reading is made up of like this rope, maybe with these two big strands, and the two big strands are woven with these different threads, where you have the language comprehension at the top and word recognition rope at the bottom. Very often, as a student gets older in school, we tend to focus on the language comprehension rope. But we need to make sure that we've accurately and adequately focused on the word recognition rope first, or go back to repair it and make it stronger if we haven't done that. The top rope, the language comprehension rope, is made up of those different background knowledge and vocabulary, and it gets increasingly strategic as a student develops his or her skills. And the lower rope, the word recognition rope, those strands of phonological awareness and decoding and sight word recognition, those strands and skills become increasingly automatic as a student progresses. Now I want to show you a quick animation of the reading rope with a little bit more explanation on that bottom strand. So this isn't all of it, but it's 2 minutes of it. This is from the AIM Institute for Learning and Research, and they have a program where teachers can take an online structured literacy like learning system with practicum experience and kind of with cohort practice.
Imagine you're going bungee jumping. This is your third time, so you feel really good about going up to the highest platform. You get to the top and step up to the jump line. You take one last look at your bungee cord. That's when you see the portions of your cord are frayed. How do you feel about jumping now that you know your rope isn't strong? We know from the simple view of reading that readers need to be skilled in both word recognition and language comprehension, and that poor skills in either one creates a breakdown in reading abilities. To provide effective instruction, it's helpful to understand with a little more detail exactly where the reader needs help. So let's dive deeper into this equation and explore Hollis Scarborough's reading rope. The lower strand of the reading rope focuses on word recognition and includes 3 critical skills: phonological awareness, decoding, and sight recognition. These skills affect how we interact with printed text. Phonological awareness is our ability to work with speech sounds of language, like knowing that syllables make up words, handle, or recognizing the individual sounds within words, f. Decoding requires knowledge of the alphabetic principle, which is that sounds are represented by letters, and that not all spelling sound correspondences are direct one-to-one relationships. Like, you can spell the k sound several different ways. For example, the word cake has 2 spellings for this one sound. Sight recognition means that you see a familiar word and can instantly process it. Be aware that this doesn't mean only high-frequency words. To understand a reader struggling with the word recognition strand of the reading rope, try reading this out loud. That's pretty hard, right? We've artificially frayed your reading rope by removing the vowels, simulating a word recognition weakness. You might be able to get a few words here and there, but you can't decode accurately or efficiently.
So teacher knowledge, like I said, that's really important. And if you don't have as much knowledge in these areas as you would like, I encourage you and the decision makers around you to seek out programs or approaches or trainings that are aligned to the knowledge and practice standards, and then rely on those things. So sometimes we may have a tendency to sort of bristle against something that's scripted, but many of the programs designed in a structured literacy way are scripted to enable the teacher to go through the lessons in a competent manner, knowing that the content and the scope and the sequence is well designed, starting with the easiest skill and then progressing to more complex. You have those 3 examples of different programs of their scopes and sequences, and I wanted you to take a look at those to just notice that there is a pattern. There are generally the most common sounds and the most common consonants, and then the syllable type, you'll see closed syllable is taught first. You may see a slight variation in the order after that, but you also have different morphemic elements introduced. And for me, when I was first learning on how to improve my practices, and it was driven by trying to help those that I care about, and then try to translate that into classroom practices, because I do care about my students as well. Knowing that the scope and sequence matters was really big for me. It was an aha moment. So you have those 3 examples. There are others, but to a large degree, they'll be very similar. But what you might notice if you spend more time with them, or maybe you already noticed it earlier, is that each content component of structured literacy, each of the colored aspects of the wheel is ordered, simplest to more complex. And that scope and sequence is supported by the science of how we learn to read. If you look at this example of white matter tract in the brain, this is done by Stanislas Dewan, a cognitive neuroscientist. He explains it very well with this graphic. Okay? And as we build our reading circuit, we tend to, once we have a focus of our sounds and we apply those to letters, we start to build a pathway that takes some effort, but that pathway is the yellow pathway. And with more exposures, then we switch to automaticity and we use the green pathway. So here, it's set out in better bullet points. But initially, children are deciphering words. When they see it, they effortlessly attend to each letter, convert that to what they know of the sounds, and then they listen to that word and understand it. And assembling that string of letters and then bonding them to the sounds of our language, the phonemes, is difficult for many students, and it needs to be explicitly taught. And then with teaching and practice, a student will become more automatic, and they'll use the green route, where they'll process their letter-sound correspondences simultaneously. Stanislas Dewan says this, that teachers must focus on the yellow route, okay? The green route will develop with practice. So knowledge of the phonemes, or the sounds of our language, is one of the 3 main variables that predict success. That was a whole bunch of new learning for me. I'm not a speech-language pathologist. Like I said, high school language arts teacher. For me, that's something I really had to learn a lot more about. Knowledge of the phonemes is one of the big three that help predict success in a student's reading acquisition. And the other variables, the size of a student's vocabulary and the presence of books in the child's surroundings. Earlier, when we had the balanced literacy slide against the structured literacy slide, we had a reference to authentic text. And in a structured literacy classroom, authentic text is there. That's often used for a teacher might be reading aloud, or for classroom discussion or building knowledge base and vocabulary and listening comprehension. But when we say decodable text or controlled text, we use that for when a student is practicing their reading skills to match whatever level they have learned. A few examples of phonemic awareness. So if we zero in on the orangish red aspect of our structured literacy circle, teacher knowledge of which sounds and the progression of phonological skills is really important, so that when you are working with your students, you're able to tell where on the phonological awareness continuum are they weak, and then begin your instruction there. So you might have someone who's weak at this basic syllable level, or this could be the very appropriate place to begin for your kindergarten students. So can you stand up for just a minute? If you can move your chair back and stand. Okay. So class, say this word, say birthday. Birthday. Now say birthday, but don't say birth. Day. Say number. Number. Now say number, but don't say num. Okay, that's a basic syllable level, so you're answering me within 2 seconds. My brain is like, okay, check, you're automatic, great. If you are just learning this, we would practice more here. Class, say November. November. Say November, but don't say no. November. Say wonderful. Wonderful. Say wonderful, but don't say one. Wonderful. Okay, next level. You are able to separate out, a longer word and remember, what's left. You're able to take a syllable away and remember the rest. Class, say fall. Fall. Say fall, but don't say f. Fall. Say gate. Gate. Say gate, but don't say g. Gate. Okay. Onset rhyme level, automatic. So we would keep going. And if you teach the very youngest of kids, there's a point where some of your kids may be very strong in this and able to move on. For some kids, developmentally, they aren't there yet, and that's okay too. But this is a phonological awareness screener by David Kilpatrick. It takes about 5 minutes or less, especially if they're younger, to administer. And when you do this and you hear that they take longer than 2 seconds to answer, you know where you need to work, which can be helpful if you're working with students in a small group, or in general, you can cast a wide net to your class and do this type of activity. So even though you can't hear everyone's responses, you are trying to sort of maximize their exposure to the different phonological continuum skills. Another way you could do it is to rely on someone who developed a scope and sequence for phonemic awareness drills, and then use the script. So I'm going to have you use the hand that you hold a pen or pencil with, and you're going to say a sound after me or a word, but when you say it, you'll pull down, okay? So let's repeat these sounds. Ah, t, s, b. Okay, so we will have done those sounds, whatever sounds we were working on, and we're going to focus on A sound, short A sound today, and closed syllable words. Say had. Say had. Say the first sound in had. Say dad. Say dad. Let's say the sounds in dad. So cross your body and use your thumb and your pointer finger in your middle field for d, ad, dad. Say van. Say van. Let's say the sounds in van. V, a, n, van. And then we'll progress to blending. Say had. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Told you wrong. Listen and repeat. Listen and repeat. Ad. 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 Let's blend that. Had. Let's rhyme. Say nap. Say nap. Can you think of a word that rhymes with nap? Cap. Pap. I heard a bunch. Good job. Let's take a sound away. Say gap. Say gap. Say gap without the g. Good. Okay. Let's substitute. Say lab. Say lab. Can you change the first sound in lab to g? Gab. Good. Okay, so thank you. You can sit back down. But this type of teaching is important for all our students. And then if they get older, it's important for those students who struggle to read. And they may be weak anywhere along this continuum of phonological skills and phonemic awareness. And it's nice to know that and then know like how to target instruction to that. Another example from Literacy How. This is a very quick clip in a classroom with more than one student. So you can take a look and see. Okay.
I'm going to say a few words the way the aliens say it, and you guys are going to clap your hands and tell me the full word. We'll do a couple more practice words, okay? Let's practice with the word dog. Ready? The aliens say d, g, d, g. But how do we say it? Dog. Very good. The aliens say s, oop, oop. Soup. Wow. Can you hold that card up? Just one card. Okay, don't say what it is. Okay? But I'm going to tell you how the aliens say it. They say juice. What do we say? Juice. Very good. Okay. I'm going to say the word, and if the kids get it, you're going to pull the picture out from behind. Okay? Here we go. You ready? Here's what the aliens say. You help me help them to know how we say it. You ready? I can tell you why you're all looking at me. You saw the picture, didn't you? Ready? Here. Cheese. What do we say? Cheese. Let's put it back together for them. Excellent. Show the class. Did they do it right? They sure did. All right, put that one down. Now we're going to do one more. All right, here we go. Here's the aliens version. Peas. Peas. Wow, you guys are really good at this. Okay, did they get it right? They sure did.
It's also nice with the idea of morphology and the meaningful units, word units in our language, is to do oral introduction of those things also. So at the high school level, what I might do is orally introduce a root and have a student manipulate and add prefixes and suffixes before maybe we see that word in print. By practicing these things orally, we give them a place to anchor that word into long-term memory when they see it in print. So I might say something like, class, our root today is struct, S-T-R-U-C-T. And struct means to build. Okay? So class, if you add the prefix con to the root struct, say that new word, everyone. Construct. And if you have construct and you add a suffix, ed, say that new word, everyone. Constructed. Change the suffix, the ending in constructed, to suffix ing. Say that new word, everyone. Constructing. Okay, so we would do more of this, but that's an example of morphemic awareness that you can do at any subject area, as a nice way to pre-teach content for anything that you're trying to have your kids learn. One last video example, and this is syntax, and this is with a small group.
You know the gesture, Kate. This one? Do everybody make this gesture. Look, they're all right here too, with the letters that it goes with. So today, now that you're warmed up, you know what our vowels say, right? You're not going to have a difficult time reading these words. So I'm going to have you read some words. You have to decide if the word that you're reading tells me who, so that means it could be a person, a place, or a thing, or an animal, or does it tell me an action? Is my word an action word that I'm reading? All right, so let's read this first word together. Oh, let's find, I see our, that was fast. Is run, is that a who, or is that something we do?
Do.
It's something we do. Can you put it under the do column, please?
Hop, hop, hop.
Okay, is it a who or is it something we do?
Do. Do.
Can you hop? Make your fingers hop. You can, if you can make it happen, it's something that you do. There. All right, so now we have who's and we have do's. And in order to make a sentence, you have to have a who and a do. You get to choose who you want to talk about and what they're going to do. And we're going to start off our sentence where we're going to say
With a capital letter.
with a capital letter. So now say this. The
Frog swims.
good. You want to use it, pull that over. All right. And look what you said, swims, and that's so great. Guess what I have? I have your S there because we don't say the frog swim, we say the frog.
Swims.
And then what do I have to, what do you think is on my last card?
Period.
All right, can you say your sentence now? Go ahead and say it.
The frog swims.
Have your students say it. You're the teacher. Say, okay, everybody say the sentence.
Okay, everybody sing the sentence. The frog swims.
Now, can you add to it for me? Can you tell me where he swims? Who could tell me where he swims?
In the pond.
In the pond?
Yeah.
Okay, let me put these out. In the pond. Good. Let's read that sentence now. Ready to go.
The frog swims in the pond.
I'm going to change it to this. Now what does the sentence say?
Frog.
Read the sentence to me.
The frog swims.
And let's go back to in the pond. Let's change it to not just in the pond. Let's change it to in the big. Do you want it to be big or little? Big. The big pond. Okay. Ready? Go ahead.
The frog swims in the big pond.
Now, let's say this together. The frogs. And then let's say this. Swim. And then let's say all of this together in the big pond. So say that as a chunk. Ready? We're going to do it this way. The frogs. And instead of saying the frogs, say the frogs swim in the big pond. Say it this way. In the big pond.
In the big pond.
Good. Ready? Let's now you do it all by yourselves.
The frog
And say it this way. The frogs.
swims in the big pond.
And when I say the frogs, now we don't say swims. Now we just say swim. If I say the frog, then I have to say swims. That's funny. Let's try it that way. What's this say again? In the
Big pond.
In the big pond. In the big pond. Ready? Go.
The frog.
And say it this way. The frog
swims in the big pond.
Here's your the. All right. The dog. What is the dog going to do? Or does he sit on the floor?
He sits on the floor.
On the floor. Okay. Let's move that over here like this. On the floor. What kind of floor does he sit on? A soft floor? A hard floor?
No, a hard floor.
On a hard floor. All right, ready? Let's read it.
The dog sits in the
Hard
floor.
on the hard. Right?
Now I see
Let's
it.
count and see how many words we have in this sentence.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7 words. Oh my goodness. 7 and with the period. Look. When you come up to a 7-word sentence, it's a 7-up. You made 7-word sentence. It's a 7-up with the period.
So in bringing this all together, this type of teaching and knowledge of the structure and the scope and sequence of our sound system of language and the science of how we learn how to read is valuable for students at any age. So even if you're working with an adult who's learning how to read or learning how to read more efficiently, you would do these types of things. You can just sort of change up maybe the interface and how you present it. All students are advantaged by this approach to teaching reading and writing and spelling. And the robust body of research that this is informed by, some of it is printed out for you in a resources page that's over by Kate on the chair. But know that also we'll send you a link to a folder with more resources for either looking into what I've already showed you on this PowerPoint or for further study. So no matter sort of where you are in the education realm, if you can have this on your radar in seeking out pre-service and in-service professional development that is aligned to the science of reading and the knowledge and practice standards of the International Dyslexia Association, seeking out curriculum or keeping that in mind, whether it's a program that's scripted or an approach that allows the teacher to serve as the practitioner and the expert in how they present it. Seek those out that have been aligned and accredited by the International Dyslexia Association. And seek out higher education models for teacher training. And if you go to our website, you'll be able to find higher institutions that have programs in reading or other that have been accredited to the IDA standards.